Spinning. And we are live with SEO Meetup Melbourne. Do. Howdy, y'all. My name is Nick Ranger. I'm joined with the amazing Saijo Jaws. And how are you, Saijo?
I'm doing great.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And of course, it wouldn't be SEO Meetup without a wonderful guest speaker, Dan Wilds. For anyone that knows him, you already know the man, the legend, the myth, the enigma that is Dan Wild from No Standing. Say, how are you, Dan?
I'm doing well. That intro, man. I'm gonna need to deflate my head as I leave this room because oh my gosh, the ego is gonna be out of control. No, yeah, doing really well, man. Doing really well. Just going in and doing the post lockdown life at the moment and making things happen.
Awesome. What's been one of the best things that you've done since post lockdown?
There's this amazing steak place nearby, and I've been waiting for so long. It's very small venue. I got in with a couple of mates, and it was just fantastic. Best steak in Melbourne. I probably won't shout them out now, but
Whoa.
I'm serious, guys. I'm serious about my steak. And if anyone wants to catch up, just let me know. You know how to get me. Simple way.
All right. Well, that doesn't sound like a mistake to go there. So, stay tuned. Maybe Dan might share the best place to get a steak in Melbourne. And for anyone outside of Australia, or actually even anyone outside of Melbourne, Melbourne is a phenomenal place for food. So to take the crown of the best steakhouse, that is a very illustrious title.
It's huge. And I'm willing to stand by it. I'm not flipping. And if anyone can best it, look, I'm just going to be impressed. I'm just going to be happy about it.
And how about you, Saijo? What was your best thing that you've done post lockdown?
I don't know. I don't think there's one best thing. It's just kind of going through. It's not the same, I guess.
Yeah.
You still can't catch up with friends outside. Not everybody's willing to and all that. And every place will still have restrictions in place. But yeah, compared to the rest of the world, I think we're lucky. So yeah.
Incredibly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a pretty good sobering thing just to be very mindful of, that not everyone is in the same place at the moment. So apologies for anyone who's, still doing the right thing, staying indoors, wearing masks, socially distancing, all that stuff is very much prescient until we get an official vaccine that goes through and makes things a lot safer for people to be able to go out and to be able to adventure. But yeah, that's really, really good. For me, it was just going out to the Old Bar, which is an iconic bar in Melbourne, and seeing live music for the first time in I don't know how long.
Is there live music now? Oh
There's
my
live
goodness.
music.
I'm missing out. I need to get amongst it.
The live music capital of Australia. Sorry, Sydney. I think Melbourne takes it out. 100% biased. I played in both cities, but I think Melbourne is just the tippity top for a large diversity of amazing musicians, and I got to see live music, and that was phenomenal.
Mate, that's the cake. That's the cake topper right there. That's
I think so. And that's a really good segue into the news. Now we're February 2nd here in Australia, and there's been a lot of things that's happening with Google. Saijo, you are the head honcho at TDLR Marketing, which is a wonderful newsletter. If you're not subscribed, this is not sponsored. This is a newsletter that I'm subscribed to, a lot of my friends are subscribed to, and it's a fantastic way of getting the news that is being filtered in a really, really concise way. And it's not just for SEO, it's across all different marketing channels. And for a lot of my PPC friends as well can attest that this is some good quality filtering. So you want to get the best skim of the best of what's happening right now, TDLR Marketing. So Saijo, like enlighten us. What are the things that people are talking about right now?
I think the biggest thing in Australia is like Google's beef with the Australian government, I guess.
Absolutely.
So that's like I wouldn't call it Google's beef with the Australian government. It's like ACCC kind of had this weird like the news bargaining chip. Like I don't know the exact term that they use for that, but they have this like proposed law where like they will be limiting Google and Facebook
Yeah.
in like I don't think it's really a fair way, I would say, but it's kind of biased towards some news publishers where they will get uh, paid for like their links appearing in search plus some added benefits like they need to be notified. I think it was 30 days but was reduced to 14 days after a while, like whenever any major changes happen in search engine or their algorithm they should kind of notify them of what it is and all that. It just doesn't sound like that's going to happen. And so yeah, so Google is kind of taking a stand against it. They've been putting up like big ass messages in like search saying like just be careful like about this new thing that's coming up. It's going to change the way Google and YouTube is going to work. And I think it was about a week ago that they said like if this is going ahead in its current form, they have no other like way other than just like pulling out Google from Australia.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's just
very
what I thought.
interesting. It's like very different to the way that they've dealt with it in other countries. Because of course, in some countries, Google News is not a thing. Like you can't get that, but it extends to the organic space and the SERPs in a more
Yeah.
common way, which is incredibly surprising that they would take that broad of a scope through a legal
I
sort of
think I
style.
think it's again like with some of the wording that they have in the actual proposed law is you can't just take away news in that sense.
Yeah,
So that was one of the things. So like I think in Spain and France,
yeah,
like maybe about a year ago, that they had something similar. Google pulled out news, and I think in Spain it might still be out. I'm not 100%, but that's how they kind of used to operate. But here, like they're coming in with a hard stance and saying like,
yeah.
nah, like if this is the way that you want to go forward, like we have no other alternative. And I kind of get it, like if they are gonna say like to a specific set of publishers, okay, here is how our algorithm work, like then it's like I'll probably try to get a job there, and then I can like go anywhere else and become.
There's this amazing side hustle of an agency doing SEO for everybody with all the secret tricks, But
Yeah, I
it's
just
one of
like
those things.
just go to work there, or like just pay someone off and ask them that what did Google tell you?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah. My kind of take on this is like the cost versus benefit analysis. If we really look at this, the impact on businesses at large will have a massive effect. I mean, we're talking about Google Analytics today. Majority of everyone's traffic comes from organic search, which makes my life extremely fun and busy. But in saying that, if they're taking away a major channel, a major source medium of traffic, that's going to have a massive impact. So it's almost, to me, it almost feels bite the hand to save the few, if that's the right
Yeah.
way to use that phrase. Like it doesn't seem to make sense from an economic standpoint if we kind of like take it that angle. So I don't know.
It's not just that, right? Like everybody, like it's like Google is kind of synonym with like if you want to search for something, you Google it. So you kind of take that away. It's gonna have like a big impact on everything, like education, like businesses, everything. So
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
like, have you tried Googling something in Bing or DuckDuckGo or whatever it is? Like,
Yeah.
it's not the same. And if
No,
it
that
was, like
Already.
people would have already like there are like legitimate reason why people shouldn't use Google as much as they do.
Yeah.
But like now the other like search engines come like they're not even close. It's not even a race. It's like Google is there and that everybody else is there at some far away point. So yeah.
Yeah, their market share is still 95% in Australia, and it's been there for years. And sure,
Yeah.
we're seeing movements in other search engines there. They're going there, but we're talking about a tiny percent of overall searches being made on them. And I think one thing that always gets me, the big reason not to go big in all these other search engines, is exact match URL connections. Like, just that is just such a common thing where if you just have the exact URL that you need, that's it. I think Google has been spending time to be smarter about that, providing better content to users to avoid that. And I think that, yeah, there's a business argument. I totally agree, by the way, Nick, 100%. But I also think, me as a user, I think that I will, even if I'm not working on Google, suffer because of that, because all these search engines won't keep up. I'd love to see if Apple will change that, because I know they're working on their thing, and that's all in the background. But that's a way off. That's not going to happen anytime soon.
Even if they come out with a search engine to kind of get to the level of Google, that's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight.
100%.
And again, even if Apple launches, I'm pretty sure their primary market is not going to be Australia.
Yeah, true.
You're gonna,
That's a good point.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I feel like Bing is just not a good enough alternative.
No,
so let's
none of the other ones are.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, we're kind of choosing the lesser of two evils here. Google is by no means a saint. If you look at the various lawsuits that they have.
Right now, if we want to take a stab at Google, we'll be here all night.
But in its current form, I don't think the law that they're proposing is very fair. And not just to Google, to everybody else, right? There will be a set of publishers who kind of know what works, and it's the rest of you can, we don't really care about you, so do whatever you want.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Well, if anyone has any thoughts or anything like that, please tweet at us after this. Saijo George, Dan Wild with a J, and me. Well, that's just my Twitter handle, but it'd be really great to have a conversation after this. Saijo, was there anything else you'd like to have as a point of discussion?
Yeah, so one other big news in our industry was the news about Hamlet Batista. So
yes, of
that
course.
kind of really shook our industry.
He
was such a prominent figure who was always willing to kind of share all his cutting edge learning stuff. And I think he was I would say most people in SEO would have gravitated towards Python because of him, or at least in a major part because of his efforts.
Yeah.
So that was really shocking.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember reading the news on Twitter. And for anyone who doesn't know Hamlet, he's just the kind of guy that would be the very first person to reach out to see if you needed any help. He was just uncommonly kind. He took a lot of time and really imbued the best spirit as that we have as a SEO community, and just a digital marketing community at large. It was absolutely shocking. Willie Ray, who is a really good close friend of Hamlet's, has set up a really fantastic GoFundMe with permission of his family. I will add that as a link in the show notes, after this. But yeah, thank you so much, Saijo. That is one that is definitely not to be missed. And much respect
Lily
to him.
has an article as well. If you wanted to learn more about that, that was a fantastic article. She was really close with him, I guess. So that's a very personal message that she's put through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And on that sobering message, this is just be be safe. Be safe for yourself, be safe for others. And if you have any concerns, please get tested. Because every member of us is very, very valuable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Google Analytics 4.
There is one more thing.
Oh,
sorry.
one more.
Right. Sorry.
Saijo, bring in the news.
Yeah.
So this one was like, there was a small change to, I think it was the price drop. So like Google product structure data has like a new thing that you can do where like, they will kind of show the price drop within the SERPs. So if you have like a major price drop, if you do this markup, your SERP will kind of highlight that. So I think that's something that you should do, especially if you're on the e-commerce side of things.
Yeah. I think at the moment,
and again, like this is US only, by the way, so it's something to kind of prepare for, I would say.
Literally what I was just about to say. It's something that I haven't been able to test, so it's not necessarily something I've looked too much into. But yeah, for anyone that's listening in America at the moment, that is a fantastic thing to be able to look up and try for yourself up later. Google Analytics 4. Now, it's a very controversial topic, mainly because it is it's using a completely different data set. It's at first glance not very intuitive as to how to read it or to use it or even really to set it up, especially for e-commerce sites out there. So as I said at the very, very start, Dan is really the man. And a good friend that I usually lean on when it comes to tricky things with Google Analytics. So I'd really like to now just let you have the floor and
Cool.
basically school us in what is what for Google Analytics 4.
Cool. Well, look, let's just jump right in. So I think you've like, oh, magic. I think you've hit the nail on the head, right? It is kind of divisive. I think with any new technology, it is absolutely reasonable for you to go, is it worth it? And for you to know whether or not it is worth it. Unfortunately, there needs to be a fair chunk of commitment to understand it. Oh, thank you, Paula. Appreciate it. There's a commitment to learning it, and I think there's a lot of approaches. And today, I want to help you decide if it's worth it, because spoiler alert, it depends. Oh. Man. It's just, we have to go there. It's an SEO meetup. Someone has to say it, but it absolutely depends. Like, there's considerations for your site, but largely the considerations come down to you as a person and how you want to market and the resources that you have. So today, I wanted to quickly intro who I am, and then I want to kick right in. So I'm Dan Wild. That really is my last name. No E's, no Y's. The amount of time I have to tell people that, it's just like the adjective, is insane. Now, I'm the head of digital and no standing. I do all sorts of things, running around, doing everything from site builds to PPC and so on. Sorry, I think my wife's just walked in. She's just come back from the dog, picking up the dog. My apologies. My main focus is in digital. I've largely been around the analytics. I started in sort of a devy role, moving into a paid media role, and then more in the analytics and general marketing. I'm a husband. My amazing wife is like more than 50% of my life. Like, she's incredible. And obviously Daisy, whom will make several appearances, is my amazing dog, Golden Retriever. A lot of you have already seen Daisy, but she's amazing, and we just love her to pieces. Now, other than that, obviously what I love to do is I'm a musician, but other than that, it's trying out new things and learning something new. Whatever I can do, I kind of like to learn and not be stagnant. So hence the exploration into GA4. So what are we going to go away with today? What are the three things I want you to sort of leave with? Number one, a history of GA4. And when I say GA4, I really mean the entirety of the Google product line, from Urchin all the way to GA4 and where we're at and why we're at where we're at. We'll go then to how it differs from UA, so Universal Analytics, which is some people call GA3, which I think is absurdly confusing. GA4 and UA, I think they're very obviously two different things. So when I say UA from now on, you'll understand it's probably Google Analytics as you understand it. And then finally, I want to go through both the use cases and the implementation of GA4. I will preface this is that GA4 is a highly customizable experience. And because of that, the use cases are going to be up to your imagination. So we're going to work through a little bit on some of the popular things that you'll need to do, as well as some of the more, I guess, common occurrences and things you might regularly want to come through, as well as some tips and tricks along the way. This is not Daisy, by the way, but I needed to find a dog with a book. And it was very difficult to shoot Daisy this morning. She was like, nope, not having a single bit of it. So history of analytics. Analytics has upgraded several times throughout the years. And we need to understand where it's come from to understand why we've ended up in the place where we are and how we can better turn these things around to our advantage. And I guess leverage the future of the way that Google wants to see analytics. So here's the story. Table from Chris. I told him that I'd keep this in here because I love my design team. So Chris and I, we were talking about this. Urchin was a product that was purchased by Google in 2005, later rebranded to Google Analytics. It was something you installed. It was very pixel-based to track your information. Later, we moved to Universal Analytics, which was something you place in the head tag of your website to track the traditional page view. You could add event snippet into the body to understand what else was going on and get, clicks. You could get all sorts of different metrics. We later kind of saw that Universal Analytics as a whole didn't cover the mobile space very well. So Google came out with Firebase. And at the same time, they explored Google Tag Manager, where they looked at an option where non-devs could start to look after their marketing tags and manage them all in one way. This is a huge focus of where I'm at. I love GTM. I love it. I think it's the best tool. There's reasons where it's not the best tool, but for what it is, it's an incredible thing. Later, 2016, we moved to a full analytics offering within Analytics 360 and the Google Marketing Platform. Then more recently, GTag, which is a souped up version of UA. It has so much more capability, loads quicker, gets more information through. And then finally, as of now, really, as of kind of November of last year, we've moved to Google Analytics 4. So Google Analytics 4 in its rawest state, is the step to make Google combine the power of Firebase for applications and the power of websites from Google Analytics. I know so many of us are going to be looking at, and in fact, this whole presentation is looking at this from a strictly web focus. The reason for that is because of the technicalities involved with Firebase. There's a lot of SDK knowledge, which frankly, I don't want to lose everybody on. And it's something I'm happy to talk with other people about if they want to hit me up on LinkedIn or on Twitter. But this is an ecosystem. We started with kind of pixel technology, moved to a JavaScript technology that was good for websites, saw an opportunity in mobiles, created a boutique platform, and then enhanced the JavaScript story. And finally, we're still using GTag, have now created Google Analytics 4. So why do we do tracking? Because we need to know what's going on. Simple as that. Tracking in general, every generation has made reporting clearer. I know we don't always feel that way when we start. It's more flexible, have better integrations, and helping us deliver more data-driven campaigns. This basically is the fundamentals behind all the ad personalization that exists. I'm sure a number of the paid environment, we use a lot of audiences from Google Analytics, but also from an SEO sense, being able to understand not just that your data came in, but understanding the user flow, understanding the user journey, understanding how we can better the content through scroll depth indications and so on, have really helped us get a full picture of what's really going on in the back-end environment of any marketing campaign. Now, I believe that even now, the flexibility component for GA4 is the biggest takeaway. The reporting is a little clearer, maybe not right now, but we'll get there. And it will continue down this trend. And there'll probably be something better that comes out later in the past. So what is GA4? When should I use it? We need to understand why GA4 is better than UA and when it's not, because it's not always better. And obviously the best time to implement it. So this is GA4. Normally, if I was in a room with everybody, I'd ask who's seen this before, but a a lot of us probably have seen at least the front end of this. It's very similar to what we currently have, just a little bit sleeker, a little bit clearer, and noticeably quite a few more sidebar options, it feels like, to sort of engage with. We must understand, of course, that this dashboard can allow for multiple sets of data, and because of that, tends to quickly run away from us if we're not careful. So the fundamentals of GA4 and how it really differentiates itself from UA is that it is built entirely off events. So when I'm on a mobile device versus when I'm on a desktop, page views only work on desktop, whereas events work on both. So from now on, whenever you go into Google Analytics and you check your GA4 property, you will find that you get events for everything. I'm talking, you get a page view, that's an event. You get scroll indications. Obviously, those things are events. Even user engagement, like clicks on certain areas of the website, will all come through as events. This is because SDKs are able to understand it. And because of that, we can meld the data together to deliver something that is cohesive and something that is well understood from a user journey sense from both web and mobile devices. The extra benefit here as well is that unlike in the past where we kind of got events, we got label, action, and category, and that was kind of the gist of the way that Google Analytics was allowing us to deal with events. Now we can have quite a number of parameters. I will be honest and say I don't actually know the limit, but I know that you can get in the 10s, 20s without much concern. This, of course, is a fair step up when we're considering how to gain information, particularly when we think about how we can work with our developers, as well as maybe Tag Manager as well in my case, to pull in things dynamically from a website and establish a strong events network within it. So like I mentioned, this is all events. This is taken straight from a debugging window, which you can access in Google GA4, so long as you have Google's Chrome Analytics Debugger plugin, well, extension, I should say. You can actually test all these things in real time, very similar to the debug in Google Tag Manager. Now, a really key takeaway is that Google Analytics 4 uses batched data. That means that it stores data for a short period of time before delivering it. This means that you might be a couple of seconds to a minute or two behind the trend as to where you would be on your UA property. This is likely to change soon, but just the sheer quantity of data that's getting pushed across now, particularly with all these extra parameters, continues to be something that I'd imagine Google is trying to combat and figure out, in all honesty. If we were to click in, and apologies, guys, I don't have, I don't want to do this live because there's a lot of data that gets shared and obviously NDAs exist. But clicking on things like user engagement or page view or scroll depth will give us a full understanding about how that, what the parameters are behind any of that, and can be used to then create goals and conversions within the platform without relying on strictly just those four things: the category, label, action, and so on. From a user interface perspective, we've moved away from kind of those four audience acquisitions, behavior, and conversions to a much larger interface, but at the expense of not having so much drop downs. Because of this, information is very clear within GA4. I think that in terms of getting the full picture, it is much quicker for someone to get the information that they're looking for after a little bit of work understanding the platform in GA4 than it would be for Google, the UA system. The one thing that is probably a concern here on my side, and I think a miss, and I think, Peter, you've asked a question about this, about wanting to change something in GA4. I've got a list as long as anything. But a big thing is its integration to e-commerce. And I think Google Analytics 4 doesn't do a good job of that. It doesn't give a full breakdown in a way that I would expect. Like doesn't really tag up promotional codes unless you go in and spend a whole bunch of time to do that. Whereas Analytics, at least UA, has a very strong understanding of how your marketing flow would work from an e-commerce sense. So spoiler alert, E-commerce guys, you're not going to get as much joy out of this just because of the way it's gone. That being said, from a strictly design sense, beautiful. I love GA4. I think it looks beautiful. It looks clean. The data is presented really well, but it just needs a little bit of TLC to get there in general. What we can end up with is something in the Analysis Hub, which is a brand new tool, which is better than the dashboard. I think a lot of us are used to the dashboard or custom reports view in Google Analytics. It's basically just like build your own Excel spreadsheet and then hope it works. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Or then you connect it to Data Studio and you've got to learn a whole new system. And then you've got to think about all these things. Like, having done that, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm so happy to have something like this. This is an Analysis Hub, which will allow you to measure against all sorts of things, everything from types of users, as I've done here, through segment analysis and so on, but can also be done to against line diagrams and any sort of visualization that you're after. It doesn't show that in this screenshot, but I will show later. Even to a point where GA4 will allow for things like anomaly detection, which will help you understand when there are outliers in your data based on the sensitivity that you give it. I don't need to harp on too much about it to say why that's a good thing, but obviously being able to dictate when things are an outlier will stop you from making an incorrect marketing decision, regardless of your marketing mix. So very exciting space. I think for this alone, install GA4. I'm going to tell you, it's worth just the installation, just for this level of information, even if it is solely for an information website. But we'll get to some of the ifs, buts, and whys in a moment. From a conversion creation standpoint, it's a lot simpler. It is a very easy platform to deal with. You will allow any conversion to be made from any event that occurs. So in the past, at the top there, we have UA, where it basically goes through and gives us up to 20 events that we can pre-plan into the platform, either a destination, or I use destination and custom. I don't believe in any other one personally, but those are the main things that you can connect to, and you're going to have to turn those on and off as necessary. You get 20, and that is it. On GA4, it works very differently. It will allow any conversion that you make to become, any event rather, to become a conversion at a moment. Any single one. You don't have to preset it in the back end. So if you want every page view to be a conversion, you can. But that often leads people to a question mark. And this is where I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about a tip here for you guys if you're looking to set this up. One of the most common conversion points, of course, is a page view on a thank you page. And you can set that up by creating your own events and custom building these events to occur when particular conditions are met. So I've used the example of a page view here. If I were to click this, create event button, it would pop up and say, how do you want to build this? We would say, well, whenever there's an event name, page view in this case, on a page that contains thank you, I want an event to fire. And as soon as that event fires, you are able to turn that into a conversion. But what you can't do, unfortunately, is preset your conversions. So if you're going live, you need to go through a testing process beforehand. And it will, if I'm thinking it from an agency sense, you're probably going to lose some of that efficiency that you used to have with UA in a more common sense. But you will still have a stronger onus on creation of these great events in the process. Very simple. I love the flexibility here, but I'm going to admit very early on that this is where it becomes a little bit more techie when you get into this space. So we'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. So from an overview sense, there's probably 6 things that I believe that GA4 really brings to the table. Number 1, the events-based system. Initially, it took me a bit of time, but I really love it. I think it's a great idea. I think it works well. I love the multiple data sources. If you are running an app, having 2 systems just doesn't make sense anymore. Just have one. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of extra work in terms of setting up these events well, but it is very important to do. Dynamically building your own reporting is amazing. You can export really easily in GA4 as well. I didn't mention that before, or share it however you want to really powerfully move through your items easily and provide clients and your bosses or your team in general just greater insight. Having in-platform debugging, huge. I love it. I think it's incredible. And a really big point for people who don't have clients or teams that are on Analytics 360, they don't actually sample data in any of the standard reporting. So your analysis hub, yeah, that's going to have a little bit of data sampling, but everything else will be completely fine, which is a problem that some of us do fall into from occasion, particularly with clients who haven't laid out their properties well or done cross-domain tracking at all. Finally, and most importantly, 500 events is incredible, and they're custom ones. So page views don't count to that. Clicks, scrolls, and so on do not count towards that. Cool. And because I like visualizations that it's a little bit easier, where is my table? There it is. I forgot. I said that. That's a lot of events. That's a lot of nuts. Anyway, terrible meme. This is a bit of a breakdown about the things that you can compare on. I think probably the one when I'm looking at this table that I know some people might question is the in-platform event builder. You can do destination-based events and goals within UA, but you can't build up something custom and run it that way. You still need to put a G tag in there into your site code or do something through Google Tag Manager. One of the biggest things that I want to also mention is that there's no attribution modeling based in the GA4. You can do it in your analysis hub, but it doesn't, there's no general attribution model that's at play. I'm still looking to find the best way to answer the question, which do they default to then? I assume it's last click, but knowing Google, I'm sure it's going to be like data-driven attribution, which means no one will know how they're attributing, which is not ideal. So factor those in when you're thinking about this. Obviously, running both is absolutely an option for you at this current stage. And based on the frequency of new updates to UA, I would argue, don't quote me on this, I don't know anyone at Google who's told me this, UA is going to stick around for a little while longer. It is very much in a beta stage right now from a GA4 perspective. So UA will hang around for a fair bit. We'll see how true this holds up. In a month, if we have to have a chat about it, I might renege on that, but that's where we stand currently. So implementation of GA4. This is my dog, Daisy. Look at how cute she is. She's so happy. Basically, the implementation of GA4 is actually quite simple in terms of just getting it live. But in terms of actually setting it up, it's a pain. There's a couple of things you got to go through to make it work. So to begin, I want to warn you, my fellow Shopify brethren who have people who are on Shopify, maybe they're not on Shopify Plus, they're not using something headless. I'm going to call it right now and say GA4 is not the tool for you. Largely, this is because of the limitation on Shopify to add marketing code to the checkout liquid file, which will stop you from recording conversions from that sense. So I would highly recommend not going down this path until Shopify improves their UA offering right now. So you can pop your UA code and engage enhanced e-commerce on a normal Shopify account, but you can't do that with GA4. So for now, if you're on Shopify, run it in tandem, but more from an analytics of content perspective as opposed to a sales objective. You will still get things like add to cart and so on. You just won't get anything past the checkout moment. Cool. WordPress, everything else, I got you, fam. This is going to work and work very simply. Cool. So setting up GA4, one of the biggest things that gets me about Google is they've crammed you into GA4. If anyone's tried to set up a property as of late, you would have set up a GA4 property regardless of how you wanted to set it up. I've got news for you guys. There is this advanced options button here that usually says show advanced options, which then opens up a drop-down box that says create a universal analytics property as well. Click that button, fam. Click it and click it quick, because that is going to give you the ability to track both sites. You still need to tag them up individually, don't get me wrong, but you'll be able to have both benefits from both platforms while you're deciding whether or not this move is worthwhile for you. It's really important that you don't feel like you have to come up with all the GA tricks and tips and all this rubbish before you really have your data understood. Obviously, when you're creating anything new, I just do recommend making GA4s in general for people, but don't rely on that data yet. It still needs to get there, and doing it in tandem is by far the best way to go. Particularly if you already have processes in place for UA creation, which of course I think most of us already do. So how do we set it up? It's really easy. I'm using a site that we build only essentials. It does like fitness stuff. Basically, it uses GTag still. I call it a GTag equivalent. It's not. It's GTag. And all you would do is create what's called a data stream. This is basically Google's fancy way of saying, where is the data coming from? It'll come from an iOS app through an Android SDK. Oh, sorry, no, an iOS into an Apple SDK, Android app through an Android SDK, and finally a web database. I imagine that there'll be extensions onto this, given server-side tracking currently exists in Google Tag Manager. I wonder if that'll ever come into play. But for now, these are the three. Simply hit web in most cases, and you'll be greeted with the screenshot at the bottom, where you will see your measurement ID in the top, which is now your new UA code, as well as some tagging instructions. In general, you would just need to simply click this GTag button to copy this code into your WordPress header file. I always recommend get it as high as you can, but below meta tags, it's just kind of like how I've always done it. I'm happy to talk to someone in a little bit more detail about why someone might go higher, but in general, after the meta tags, absolutely fine. But you do want it as high as possible. If you do have loads of marketing tags, it can be a bit of a delay because it does load asynchronously. So just keep that in mind. Once you do set those up, unfortunately, you are limited in what you can do. You can still use like a little event script thing, which we can show afterwards. I didn't want to go down that path because it is probably a developer's focus more so, who can set up custom events, name them how they want, and lay out all of the individual parameters that you could possibly pull in. Again, events can have heaps as to what you need, but you can create your events like custom events if you want to in GA4. Again, using the example of a thank you page, if I clicked my create event here, named my event, got the event name that it connects to, so it's a page view. So I pick the page view. I say the page location contains thank you, or the page location equals my full thank you URL. It's important to understand that page path isn't a thing in Google Analytics 4. Very strange. It exists somewhere in the data structure, but it is page location is the new sort of cool guy in the school. It's very it's kind of a bit new, so I tend to go for contains just to avoid this sort of thing. But you can set up multiple conditions. I should reference that there is no or condition. These are all and conditions, which means all of the things must be met in order for the conversion to, or the event to fire. Cool. I always like that. I'm so used to the feedback. My apologies, guys. I'm like just making sure I'm not losing people. So don't forget to tweet me if you need.
This is awesome. This is really, really awesome.
Thanks, Nick. Always there. Always got my back, mate. So coming
is on fire right now. It's great.
Good. So continuing on, this is probably my preferred method, mainly because I freaking love Tag Manager. And those who know me know I think Tag Manager, oh man, is amazing. The stuff it can do, the stuff it shouldn't be able to do is insane, which I quite like about it. But anyway, when we're setting it up from a analytics thing, it's a little bit easier and is quite a bit similar to the way it already exists. The way you would do it is that you have something called a configuration tag. Fancy way of basically saying, put your UA code here and it'll run. It'll do the page views. It'll do whatever you want. The way you would do it, open up the tag, pop in the measurement ID, which I've just blocked because obviously that's a live view, live one. You'd click copy, you'd load it in, place it just here, and send the page view event when this loads. Is very important to tick. If you don't do that, you won't get page views, and that won't be good. I don't know why Google made that tick box, because to me, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I want to know the page views. That's why I put it in there. But it will also carry over any of the enhanced measurement, which is something I've glazed over, which are these like scroll depth, outbound clicks, PDF downloads, these sort of things, as well as part of the mix. So you can turn that off if you're a purist. Even for someone like myself who spent countless hours in that space. I like having it on. I think it's just quicker and easier. It just saves me a bit of time, but it is entirely up to you as to how it runs. Now, if we're looking at it from a events perspective, it is very different. I think this is where, for me, I think a lot of people, I think Google kind of went a little bit too far with the parameters thing. I know I've said I love it, but I think if you aren't a little bit more focused on, say, like, a little bit of JavaScript, or you've dealt with devs before, this might be a little bit confusing to everybody. The way it works, though, is that you would create a tag and you'd either link it to a existing configuration tag, or you just type in your measurement ID, as I've done here. You can name the event anything you want. Of course, I caveat this with, there's a little link that I've just placed here, which opens up to a developer's page on Google, which goes through all of the automatic events that are collected. It's pretty important that you don't double up, or else it will get very confusing. And already I feel eyes glazing over. I can feel it through the computer. But these are all things that you kind of need to consider to make sure it's there. So unique names are highly recommended, or else you get quite a bit of confusion when it comes to other people. Sorry, let me just flick back. Now, once we know some of those things, we can actually place as much parameters as we want in here. So I've put like click text, because I want to see if people are clicking, say, buttons on my website as opposed to links, which is what Google's already got in place. I might have a URL if there's some type of pop-up, anchor tag that I'm using as part of it. And then I can be even kind of stupid with it. I've like put my favorite breakfast cereal as Captain Crunch. Never had it in my life, but like you could pull in this user information. So you can categorize people. You can leverage information in a way that just is not seen in Google Analytics currently through UA. The true power of this tool is in the creativity of you as a marketer to think about the data available in your system, as well as your devs. I'm going to say it, they are just going to be instrumental here. You could create variables in Tag Manager to pull in even more information. It just, seriously, guys, it is endless as to what it can do. And I get the feeling that this might be cracked down on in the future, just based on how much information comes through in terms of the amount of events available and so on, and parameters within it. Obviously, unlike the GA tags normally, you will also need to click on all of the tagging options for the firing of this tag. So, if you're doing a click-based event, make sure it's a click-based firing condition. If it's a submission event, maybe call it something called submission and do that on like a pop-up or an Ajax listener. There's so many things that you can leverage here, guys. And I think this, for me, again, is a pro to the GA4 column. From a data collection perspective, I got to admit, this took me a while to find when I first started. Back in the day, I think, I don't know if many people are even concerning themselves with this these days, as long as it's in your privacy policy. But like, we used to click on the demographics tab and then click, engage enhanced I forget what it's called, enhanced demographics, I think it is. Once that's live, you get all that information. Now Google takes you through a fairly comprehensive process where you have to physically go into your admin panel, click on your data settings, get your data retention, and turn on individual components. There's only two currently, which is the enhanced Google signals, which is, again, that connection to, like, if I'm logged in on Google, getting all the data from all the places that I'm logged in from Google and my search results, all that jazz. And then using that to inform your demographic data, which is exactly how it works right now, as well as enhanced ad personalization. What I do like is I like that they tell me how many regions, but I don't know which regions they mean. So, thanks, Google. Appreciate it. Finally, at the very bottom, which isn't dictated on the screenshot, guys, is an acknowledgement to the fact that you understand what you're doing. Of course, a reference to GDPR and other data legislation, which is coming out thick and fast these days. So something that we need to continue to watch out for. And yeah, I've spent way too long reading that legislation, man. The fact that it's common law blows my mind. But anyway, there'll be a talk on that one day, I'm sure. Some final tips and I guess concerns, I guess. I really love the conversion component I'm going to flip this around, focus on conversions first. You go from 20 to 30 just natively. I haven't gotten to the stage where I've used 30 yet, and I really should have tested this before coming on. But I'm fairly sure that you can just flick things off and on as appropriate. Just bear in mind that if you are tracking something as a conversion, you track all the conversions in GA4. So if you all of a sudden turn something off, like you're going to see a dip or you're going to see an increase. So I do highly recommend keeping a change log, which is something, again, I'd love Google to have for something so technical that would explain if things are happening, to know if like my client one day decided, oh, I want to check the page view on this, and they for some reason came in here and clicked that thing. I don't want every page view to be a conversion, so it'd be something that we'd have to check. Now, from a data filters perspective, this is again a huge gripe now to GA4. It only really has two. It has internal traffic and dev traffic exclusions. Dev traffic being anything with a debug tag, and internal traffic is completely AI focused. I don't think this is a good move. I think this is something that UA is definitely stronger with. Just to talk about why this is beneficial, you can't restrict character types, so keeping it all lowercase for very easy analysis. You can't exclude host names. You can't do even referral list exclusions don't exist in in GA4, which for me is a massive thing. If you're running PayPal, your referral traffic is going to look amazing because you're getting all these links from PayPal, which of course isn't really what's happening. Like someone's clicking on your site, going to PayPal, getting referred back. So this is a huge miss. Can you do it? Yes, you can, through Tag Manager and a crap ton of code. Is it worth it? No. So again, keep this in mind. Similarly, there isn't an option to restrict data from spiders or crawlers, which is something that is very integral in terms of my mind. But something that is still very positive is that you can still send custom dimensions and custom metrics into this platform. So you can still send in the user agent if you really require it to get that information. It just will mean that, again, if you're looking at a filtered version of Google UA structure, your GA4 is going to look a little bit inflated, I think is the right way to put it. So using GA4, and I'm almost done, guys, because I wanted to keep this pretty open-ended for questions, because I know that there's quite a bit around this side of things to discuss. So finding useful information in GA4 is quite simple. I'm going to say that in terms of a platform, this platform is incredibly easy to understand in my mind, with a couple of key considerations at play. Firstly, we have to understand that segments aren't the way that Google runs anymore. This is probably because it does exist, don't get me wrong. I should clarify that, but not in the general field. Instead, we get something called a comparison. Now, comparisons are very simple. They're usually just like age, demographic, these sort of things, where you click one or two items, and exactly how a segment works in Google Analytics UA, it'll show up in a different color. It'll show up exact same metrics, different things, and run effectively. I should note here that what I do really like is, I do like, from an overview sense, you are able to change a couple of these metrics quite easily. I know a lot of that's available in UA already, but there are more. And you're able to get some information very quickly. Now, when I'm thinking about my everyday, particularly as I don't recommend this for e-commerce, again, as I've mentioned in the past, wow, these are going to come up really small. I'm so sorry, guys. But the way that the user acquisition reports work are a lot cleaner. We have user acquisitions by traffic and by users. The only difference is the user one says which ones are new users, and the traffic one just has a total as well as sessions. So kind of still following that weird little logic that UA has, where it's like some things are in a session scope, some are in a user scope. They still exist. But as well, there are, pages and screens is the new sort of behavior, all traffic, all pages report, which is something that I think a lot of us will touch. A couple of things to note is that there is an events column, again, pretty hard to read. Apologies, guys. I'll blow this up next time, that will let you click on what type of events are occurring, which is incredibly important when you're considering debugging things or understanding how things work. And that's just a simple drop down. You just click there and it goes and it'll restructure. Similarly, what seems to be not there, but I think is in a much better spot, is our secondary dimensions still exist. So if you were to click our little tick box here, you would get the ability to select from a multiple dimensions to reference. That being said, in its current state, there are less overall dimensions at play, and the naming conventions are very different. So I would highly recommend that you be very careful and try and just muck around. Like, I mean, now this is going live, but have a moment to consider what certain things mean. There's loads of YouTube and Google resources out there to discuss what they are. Now, I'll be honest and say that the standard reports doth butter no parsnips, as they say. They are not interesting to me in the slightest, because why would I do that when I have an analytics hub? Like, I mean, why? Obviously, quick data, don't get me wrong. But the analytics hub holds, or analysis hub words, is something that I think is just such a powerful environment that I think if you're not using, you are like, you've missed the point. You've missed the point of GA4. And that's not something I want to see for anyone who's listening in. The way it works is it has a lot of similarities to Data Studio. You have, even from a visual element, a couple of things that we have. I'm just going to look at this side. I'm going to work my way down. We have everything from the segments. And I mentioned before that segments aren't a big thing. This is the only place to find segments. You can do some weird thing, but it's always going to point you back here. And you can make segments very similar to Data Studio. So you can have inclusion rules and exclusion rules as appropriate. Similarly, with this, we can segment against people with a comparison and focus key metrics on the side here as well. Finally, obviously our rows, if we want to try and divvy it up to make it nice and clean, maybe we want it by channel or so on, we can do that. It's incredibly powerful. We can talk about nested rows. We can talk about all these things. But one of my favorite thing about it is the visualizations, being able to go from a table to a pie chart to a bubble chart to a bar chart and even a country map view. Like, come on, man. Where was this when we first started with UA? Like, we've had this ability for so long, and to see it here is incredible for me. What is cool as well is from a technique perspective, we can talk about specific things that we might want to track in a normal flow. So everything from user flow, cohort reports, funnel analysis, and we can guide these things through as appropriate. Lastly, I did mention one of the things that probably most excites me about this is the anomaly detection. Being able to understand, to first of all, train a report on your own data to figure out its own anomalies, but being able to control that period, incredible. So if you know that your business is going to take longer to get specific data, heck, push that forward. If you want your sensitivity high-low, there's no real indication as to what that means, but it's something that you can experiment with before you're notified of these things. Finally, and this is probably the only time they've done it right, there is filters that exist in this section, which is great, but it just ends up being basically the segment, but just inverted. What this allows you to do is get a whole lot of tabs, a whole lot of structures, download all of this data, building all of these sort of events incredibly easily to understand what you're doing for your client. Now, in terms of use cases, guys, and this is where, again, I'm not going to do a live one, but I'm happy to chat to people individually if they need to. Making a organic search event or segment, I should say, to start with, and then going through things like your user flow, going through things like time on page, going through all these items, it allows you to really hone in on information as opposed to being bombarded with it, which is how I feel when it comes to the standard reporting. Additionally, if I'm thinking from reporting up to my managerial staff or to clients as well, being able to pull these reports allows for insight and categorization that we simply don't see in UA. It is something that is clear, something that's easily manipulated, which I quite love, and something that gives us an option to explore data deeper than the surface level. So it's obviously a very exciting thing for me. Cool. I'm happy to take questions about more use cases for this, but really the basic use cases are those two reports that I mentioned at the start. The user and the traffic ones are the ones to go on, and then this analysis hub. The monetization section, retention, like they're all useful in certain cases. I don't find the monetization to be as strong as the e-commerce reports in UA currently, and again, wouldn't recommend it there. So all of this boils down to one clear question. Is GA worth the time? And it's, well, yes, but actually no. The truth of it is that UA in its current form where it stands, it is a beta product. It is not, I don't know why Google's shoving it down people's throat. It should be build a UA product and then choose to make a GA4 one. Instead now, it's like make a GA and then occasionally make a UA, which doesn't make sense in the slightest. So in my opinion, I think people need to install this to help them understand their existing traffic. I think there is better insights in GA4, but it doesn't have the width and importantly, doesn't have the filtering functionality to, really get to a consistent data stream, in my opinion. I think that it's something that once is fixed, this is just going to be amazing. To be completely honest, guys, I think this is the next step to the way that we view data. I think it's the next step to the way that we can optimize and enhance content in a huge way, but also websites and speed and understanding about how all these things come through. Don't get me started on like moving Web Vitals through as a GA event on Tag Manager. It's incredible and very cool. But you can do all sorts of things in this space to really give people a great picture. But again, without the e-commerce functionality that already exists in UA, without the filtering of data to make it a little bit more seamless, clarity on attribution modeling, you need to take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. So it's not a very, like I said, it's divisive, but like, hey, you do what you want to do. But definitely worth an install, but probably not a focus at the moment. And guys, that's me. If you want to reach me, my name's Dan Wild. You can shoot me an email. You can grab me on Twitter. You can scan that code to get to LinkedIn. Thank you, Peter. I know you're in the chat somewhere, man. You pointed that out to me one day and ever since has changed my life. But if you want a coffee, you want a steak, I'm always here to have a chat and talk. Cool. That's me.
Well done. That was absolutely phenomenal. Yes. I can't hear the clap of Saijo, but that was
muted.
Yes, that was absolutely amazing. Sorry, pardon?
I was just saying great talk.
Oh, right, sorry.
Thanks, Saijo. It's big news, man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, GA4 is something that all of us are at some point have had to look at. Saijo, have you sort of like played around with it much?
I've kind of enabled it for all properties that we look at, but I haven't really gone into it and anything because I'm guessing like Dan said, the previous version, UA is going to be there for a while. Yeah. I'm guessing before Google removes it completely, they'll stop people installing it in the first place. So once that happens, I think it becomes more of a reality for me.
Yeah, so, I think if we take any lessons from the way that the outcry has always been, if we think about, thanks, Peter. I totally agree. I think it's similar to the way that the new Google Search Console, when that came out, we're still using legacy tools, guys. Come on, we still don't have half those things in the new Google Search Console. Google Ads went through the same thing where they're we're going to turn it off at this date. 6 months later, people are still using the old one. So there will be a cutoff, but I know Google will be quite generous with it because, we have to also be aware that it's a new property. So you don't get any of the data retention that you had previously anyway. So you are cutting people off. You're not just, you can't in the current state, can't re-put in that data into GA4 even in a similar way. So it's a scary reality and something that we hopefully get a little bit more lead in on in the future.
Yeah. Well, let's dive into the questions because there's 12 fantastic questions, and oh man, I also have my own arsenal of questions if we have time. Saijo, my good friends, would you like to start us off with the very first question?
Start off. All right, sounds good. The first one is from Peter. I think most of the questions are from Peter today.
So, Peter loves a good chat about analytics. I'm just going to turn down my blind very quickly. Sorry. Great close up. Great picture. Sun comes through my window. There we are.
They're great questions.
The first question: if you could change one thing about GA4, how GA4 works, what would it be?
Oof,
I think
one. That's hard.
so. I think it's the three things I discussed, but I think if I was to pick just one, I think it's the filtering. I think that's it. Like I think the fear in my mind when I'm talking about data to a client that I'm talking about crawlers and I'm talking about all these other things. I'm talking about internal traffic that's run by AI. And I mean, yeah, all power to you. Google does know a lot about websites, but nothing's gonna beat me going that IP address. That's internal traffic. Like nothing's gonna beat that in my mind. I mean, you're gonna have to have people log on and maybe do some particular actions before they understand that. So filtering by far and large is the one thing that I think they just missed the mark on. But of course, like I said, the e-commerce reporting needs to be better. And I forget what my other one was now, but just from it's been a long day, guys. I apologize. But the attribution was the other thing. Sorry, that's it. Like I'd love to know. I think there's too much hidden behind walls at this moment. I think they've done a great job with the events, but there's a lot of information that's just too hidden, and that just doesn't make me happy. To be honest, doesn't spark joy.
And something you said about attribution, I think a lot of the time when we're looking, back through GA, and we're trying to find out, causes for things. One of the things that is so good about UA is annotations.
That's very true.
I couldn't find in GA4 an ability to be able to add any annotations. Like, is that actually just not a feature?
Not to my knowledge, no. And I mean, I mentioned it slightly in regard to a changelog, right? Like I know when even when we worked together, we were like, when a client's like, this new event's installed, let's pop that thing there. If we added new filtering, like
migration. If you
oh, exactly right. Like, oh man, like there's nothing more powerful than being like, this is the moment, the Fire Nation attacked, and then you saw everything change. Like that's I'm happy with that. But yeah, if that's what it is, like you need to know. And I think again, like changelog, you could have an Excel spreadsheet, you could do a Google sheet. There are ways around it. It's not ideal, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that like there's just a lot of really great functionality in UA that I don't know if Google's trying to like pull back from giving that information, but by app standards giving more possibilities with the events and parameters sort of section. But it's an interesting one, but a really good point. I didn't raise that and I should have, because it is very integral.
Actually,
Saijo is very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saijo, I might actually get you to ask the next one, because I just realized that question is yours.
Yeah. So you said something about like page views work only on desktop.
Yep.
Can you elaborate? Like, what exactly do you mean by that?
It's just the way that Firebase has worked in terms of the structure. So with SDKs, the way that the page view works is it's always sent as an event, or I believe it always has and always will be. I'm more than happy for someone to have an app developer to have a little bit more of a chat about that, because that's my understanding and working knowledge at the moment. I believe that page views as a function, like they still page view as a page view or page view as an event still result in the same outcome, right? It's just about a unification that'll work on both platforms. And I would argue that it was probably easier to update a JavaScript library for everything than it was to make specific updates to both the Android SDK and the iOS SDK to allow for page views. I'm not sure of the technology around why page views don't exist in mobile. I only know that they don't, I think is the right way to put it. And hence the unification needs to come from events in that sense.
Awesome. So Peter Machinkovich asks, you're already laughing.
We talk about this so much, dude.
Here we go.
Server-side tagging, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Do you have hours and hours and hours in your day? Do you have a working knowledge of how servers work? Do you have an understanding about how to get more information than what your current analytics platform is doing? In most cases, I'm going to say no. But as always, it's like, yeah, well, yes, but actually no. It depends. These things it really comes down to your skill. I think knowing your skill, Peter, individually, heck yes, get on it, man. It's great. But in terms of like an everyday thing for a client, or even for a personal website for me, I wouldn't usually go down that path. I think that there are some considerations that I have around first party tracking, which I think there are capacities here to allow for it, particularly when this elusive cookie apocalypse hits and we no longer use cookies in platform. If there's no technology that backs that up, then of course this sort of thing is going to be incredibly valuable. And in fact, was the way that Urchin effectively ran for a long period of time, and Universal Analytics for a small period of time. So do I think it's worth it? No, from a time sense and from a skill sense. I think you just need to invest way too much to get it working. However, I think the output and the potential custom data that you could pull, you kind of don't really need to worry about PII if it's well covered in your documentation, because you don't have to go through Google's data collection policy. You can have your own. So there's so many like little legalities that you'd get away with for a short period of time that I think is cool. But I think, just from an implementation sense, it is very difficult to get around. Simo Havana, I believe is how you spell it. I always get his name wrong. Lots of A's, lots of V's. He has done an incredible article on this. Definitely a resource and someone who I look up to in the industry. I think everyone does, to be honest. Simo is incredible at this, and I'd highly recommend reading his article. I will say that it feels like a thesis. So be ready for a lot of information. Be ready to Google a lot of things on the side. It is incredible, but I don't recommend that at the moment. Of course, that's being done through Google Tag Manager for those who aren't aware of how that's done.
Yeah, wow. I didn't think anything about that you could set your own privacy and data collection.
Well,
is that like, who would that apply to?
Well, it would apply to everyone who's collecting data. So obviously, when we collect data, we have certain legalities by going to, and again, this is something that is changing every day. So I want to caveat the living bejesus out of this, because the main thing that drives this sort of thinking is GDPR. And as I mentioned before, is a common law issue, which means judges are regularly debating whether or not this is true or not, and whether or not things should be done in a certain way. So what might be seemingly expressed in the legalities, a judge can overturn. So it is important that we take this with a grain of salt. You, by signing up to Google and by signing up to Facebook and any other marketing platform, sign a set of rules, an in-license agreement and a privacy and data collection rule that says that you won't pull in certain types of information due to legalities and concerns on Google's end. Of course, you can still do it from a physical sense, but you shouldn't from a legalities and ethical standpoint. Now, if you had your own sense of data collection, there are some benefits here. In saying that, you do still need to abide by Google Tag Manager's privacy because you're using that tool. But if you can find a way to do it natively, you could do quite a bit in there. But of course, you must make that information readily available on your website. And obviously not just like leech all the information off someone from the minute they land their homepage. Like there's a lot of ethics behind this. I believe tracking is an excellent tool, but I think there's a fine line between being like, a little bit creepy, I think it is, versus being like insightful and going after something incredible.
Yeah. Wow, that was a side of it that I didn't even consider, because I just thought it was like for performance.
Yeah, to save some speed.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one because I haven't done full analysis on the performance angle, I must admit. But like, and you're still loading a tag manager script, so like, is it from a performance angle still going to be much better? Like, maybe it just depends on how much you're pushing towards the server and how much you need to do.
Yeah, if anyone's done a waterfall test on server-side tagging, shout out, let us know.
Yeah, it'd be incredible.
Yeah. All right, next question. Saijo, do you want to take this one?
Sure. We've got another one from Peter. Do you think technical
quite a few here.
GA4 versus UA? Is it DIY friendly for first-time users?
Yeah. My short answer to this is I don't think, unless you have a working knowledge of Google Analytics above and beyond what like a normal person would have, if you are probably exposed to code in some way, particularly JavaScript, you understand like, how variables works and scopes work. I think that's kind of the line for GA4. Like if you really want to get, you want to juice the lemon, for lack of a better term, you want to get as much as you can out of it, you are going to need to have a technical background. Do I think you can DIY it? Yes and no. There's a lot of people out there already creating excellent content on YouTube. One of my favorites is Julian from Measure School. I think he's incredible at what he does. I started learning Tag Manager from him and have enrolled in his school and things like that to do those sort of items. So big shout out to that. But I think there is an incredibly steep learning curve here. That being said, it's only the learning curve on the like the implementation side, like the setting up of events and parameters. Once you have that done, like, I mean, realistically, it's still just a data observation tool. It is a data observation and manipulation tool. So, as long as you have a good understanding about how an Excel spreadsheet works, then you could do that. So it's an interesting thing. I would say for a client, don't set it up by yourself if you don't have any experience, or if you're not, if you're doing it on someone's site, that's very important to have quality of data. But you could eventually get to the point where they could use it in a functional way.
Yeah, awesome. The next question is actually mine. I'm curious because I haven't tried this out yet, and this is something that I've asked you for help with a couple of Data Studio reports. But does GA4 use the same unique regex expressions?
Unique. It's very frustrating. Like it's called regular expression, Google. Like
there are rules, man.
Yeah. By your namesake, it means that it's the same everywhere, which it's obviously not. So it's a great question. To be honest, they really are pulling away from it, regex. There's not a lot of instances where like not regex as in the what type of the framework? I don't know. The expression, I should say.
Yeah, I was like, expression will do.
Yeah, that'll do. I think we all know what we mean. They are really moving towards utilizing the AI to categorize information and then using that to do it instead. So there's still includes and excludes, but there's very little references to regex currently. Do I think it'll come? God, I hope so. And I do believe it will carry a very similar style to the current UA one. So, dots instead of stars, all of these sort of dot star instead of, just typing it in, pipe separation, all of that is still going to be something that is specific to Google. It does annoy me a lot that it's not actual regex. It's like this slight variant. It's like, like a language that has like a slang version of that language. And it's kind of a bit confusing at times, but I believe that they will have it. They do not, to my knowledge, they don't currently make it as publicly available as it currently is in platform for UA.
Yeah, all right. The next question is also mine. Just looking at acquisition data, like toggling between the graph view of day, week, month. Yep. Kind of like a question was born from one of my colleagues, and I think like when we were looking at it, we were just trying to basically see if we could make the same kinds of reports that we would using GA4 that we would like with UA.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Let me try and just bring up one now because I tend to be really strict on my date ranges to get what I want, but I know what you mean. You're talking about how it would group up in a week or group up in a month, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like if you wanted to look at just the month in UA, you would just basically do 2 months and then put the month and then just kind of like hop over the end indicator, and then that would show you the month, and you'd get a sense very, very quickly whether or not it was going up or going down, and it was very useful as a bit of a screenshot for our clients.
Just to get the information there straight away. I love it.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, let me open up my beta because I think that this is something where I've got most of my testing. I'm not going to share screen on this one because it's got loads of stuff going on there and it's going to look like crazy and no one's going to get any insight out of it except for me, which to my knowledge, it doesn't. To just answer the question shorthand, I'm just going to like throw, because I installed this the day that UA4, at the time it was Analytics plus Web or Web plus App analytics. I forget what it was. I believe it's only day on day from memory, but I would imagine that using the customization reporting, you would easily be able to, within the analysis hub, be able to sort of build out a month report based on that. I would be incredibly shocked if that doesn't exist currently, but it's not a use case that I've actually tested for some reason, because it being so new, only been out for kind of 3 months. It's it's not like I haven't really needed to use that case. But I would imagine that within the if you use the line graph visualization within the analysis hub, you would be able to get that data at the very least within a table form if required. So you could like roll up based on the weeks or months as you require it.
Yeah, I see. Because like just doing the same kind of thing, like the 2 months of data, month is just not selectable.
Oh yeah, mine does the same thing actually.
And the month view is really the one that you're after at the end of the day. It's just like, it just like the actual line graph just looks wacky. And it's like the client's going to look at it to be like, what am I looking at?
Yeah, why is the next day slightly worse than the other one, and why does it go up so much? Why isn't it consistent? All these sort of things come into question. Yeah, I agree. I've just looked at it now where I thought it was, and you're right. It only shows week. Even like I said, I've had this account from the beginning of when it's happened, and I can't even select it. So I'd suggest that again. This is another example of Google probably pushing a product a bit too soon, in that it does have week capability, but hasn't thought. Yeah, come on, Google. You don't need the money. No, I'm joking. Of course not. But they obviously still need to add in information from UA. So yet another point to UA. Like, goodness me, Nick, I completely missed that. It's a good one. But yeah, week view does exist. You can go granularity. It does seem that in the future you can do it however you want. There's a sort of a custom option there, but you could use roundup and formula tables to figure that out. Obviously, a quick way around that would be Data Studio, but you really shouldn't have to go to Data Studio to do that. That Google should be on that.
Yeah, I actually did go to Data Studio to try and build out an equivalent, and again, I think the learning curve, even for me, it was like, wow, I really got to sit down and map out what is and do the new naming convention of those, find that out. And, I think I've actually got a Data Studio question in there because like content grouping, like just like having to use like parameters and things like that. It's just like it's kind of like really janky, and I think again, like you were saying, like because it is fairly new and it's still very much in beta. From a UX perspective, like it is a little bit challenging, which is why it's
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, like the big thing is it doesn't even have channel grouping anymore. Like channel grouping straight up doesn't exist anymore. It's just source medium, which in my professional opinion is the way it should be. But also I do recognize that if you've spent the time to do custom channel grouping and you spent the time to really make sure that your referral data is referral data and that you somebody who's done crazy UTMs have, you've been able to fix that, you've been able to get it rolling properly, like why not have that capability? So yeah, I definitely empathize. I think there's a lot of onus now on the source side of things to engage that side of the flow when you're looking at data from now on.
Yeah, I'll change my Data Studio question to maybe something else because I also see that coming up. But Saijo, do you want to ask the next question?
Sure. So another one from Peter. How does the measurement protocol change in GA4 versus UA for things like offline conversion or email opens?
I love how Peter is like, Peter, this is one of the reasons I love hanging out with you, man. Is like it's never like the basic question, right? It's got to be the bottom of the barrel, hardest thing that people like offline attribution guys, like obviously the holy grail of digital marketing. Like if and people have tried to do it, and straight up, like America with the beacon technology, I'm sure you've all heard about this with Amazon doing attribution in store and so on. I think no, it was Amazon. Like that technology straight up got banned. They were like, "No, too good. No, don't too much invasion of privacy. Let's get rid of it." Measure protocol, for those who are aware, is basically a way to send hit information, or I guess information in general, into Google Analytics without necessarily doing it through a normal means. So it's like, think of it kind of like sending a message to Google Analytics without being on the website. Like you can actually completely send whatever info. This was incredibly useful when you had things like a CRM system, which I think a question comes up about that in a moment, where you can assign sort of a value to a user, and then like whenever they visit the website, that value comes through, and then whenever they make a purchase, you can indirectly push it through. The short answer is that the measurement protocol still works, but it's in alpha. And when I mean alpha, I mean it probably won't work. So it's something that I need to, I'll admit, it's something that is towards the bottom of my list of things to worry about right now, because a lot of my clients are actually just full on e-commerce, no stores, or they're just lead gen, like, service-based businesses. So for me, the use case doesn't come up at the moment, but it is 100% in alpha, dude. And I got to say, considering the tool that we're using to visualize the data is ineffectively beta, and then we're using something that's alpha, like, I see a bad time coming. So I don't really think I would be pushing that side yet, but I do believe that the functionality exists very similarly using GA dev tools. The only thing is that you would have to dictate your measurement ID as opposed to your UA property as a part of that mix. I imagine as well that if the cards are played right, and again, this is me being a futurist, not being someone who is aware of the information within Google, I'd love to see that as a data stream in future, because they have completely removed that offline conversion capability even within the platform. So hopefully in the future, that just becomes a straight up data stream where you can upload your CSV of your sales and whatever information you have and run it through that way.
Wow. Google, you're in beta, but if there's a data stream for that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be incredible, right? Like, while you're in beta, guys, like, hit me up, just give me a mention somewhere. Give me a juicy backlink. Not joking, of course not. But no, but it would be cool to see. I think that'd be incredible.
That's awesome. There's Paul's question next. Do you want to go and ask someone to Saijo?
Yeah, go. GTM is common to set up events. In which cases would you use GTM versus GD4?
Yeah. Okay. So personally, I just love being able to have the visibility. I always use GTM in most cases, with the exception of like destination style events, which is the one that I ran through the most commonly within this space. If you wanted to, there's about 6 key metrics that come through as part of the enhanced measurement. So everything outside of the page view tag, basically, which is scrolls, outbound clicks, search, video engagement, file downloads. So there's probably one, and page views, obviously, which I mentioned. So if you can find something like downloading a specific file from your server, or rather from your website, you could very easily use GA4 to dictate that for you. You get the file name, and you could just set that up as an event. So it really relies on, do I think the parameter exists in GA4 already, and can I leverage it in a way that makes sense already? In most cases, I'm going to say that I will always go to GTM to do these things, because you can do a lot more. You can control the variables that you're getting. So my recommendation would really be, unless it relates to a page view, GTM's the way to go. You can push GA4, but in general, you're going to want to have that extra control over your events, in my opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
if not, you can reach
out. Awesome.
I kind of thought it would be the other way, because if GA4 is kind of giving you all this ability to use all these events, then why not kind of leverage it there then?
Because the events are so limited, that's really why. So it really has to relate to outbound clicks, so it can't be on the same host name. That's the first thing. scrolling is like, I mean, like everyone loves a good scroll, but we don't even have bounce rate anymore. So we don't have to worry about that from an interaction hit scope thing. Video engagement and file downloads, like, yeah, you can leverage it wherever you can. But if you need anything further to it, so you have a pop-up, you want to register when a success message comes out. You can't do that in GA4. You'd have to use Tag Manager. So, I mean, it becomes a question of what are you tracking more so than anything else. Similarly, your e-commerce scope and all of that, Tag Manager is definitely the way to go. So as you get to that level of functionality, as you get to that level of data, that's when you're going to need to bring out the big guns, in my opinion.
Do you imagine that maybe there might be some pre-packaged tracking that might sort of come out of this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been using pre-packaged tracking for ages. Like I have my own, we call them recipes in Google Tag Manager, which I think is just the funniest thing. Like it's just like, oh yeah, just a little bit of Salt Bay action happening. But like I've been using it for a really long time. So I have we have a lot of clients who use Gravity Forms, for example, or they might use Contact Form 7. And so I have 2 versions where I just like swap out some variables and run it that way. I don't think Google themselves will come out with this. I think that this will be something the community pushes, because Google needs to, at some degree, have a level of deniability to what they do, or else they are just they become that conglomerate that's taking in all this information. And while that is their goal, I don't think they want to be perceived that way in a certain sense. I think they want to be perceived as someone who's helping people understand their data in a way that makes sense. And so I think it'll come down to the community to think about these pre-packaged approaches. Again, it'll always still be variable-based, simple JavaScript stuff that people will change to make that better. But 100% agree, it already exists in Tag Manager in UA. I would see no reason why it wouldn't exist in GA4.
Yeah, so I think yeah, you're absolutely right. There's cool little recipes there for it. It'd be cool if there. I don't know if there is one. But for like click-to-haul, that would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you were doing it in that space, I can tell you how to do it now. It's very easy. So I would use it in Tag Manager again. Outbound clicks are weird, right? Like, I just don't trust it as a system. But you would fire an event on a tell link click. Yep. And then all you would do is you would set a click event, just like we showed in the event slide, with the click text and the click URL, and you would get the number from that, and you would automatically have that push through. And all you would do to set that conversion is maybe you would call it something different to click. Maybe you call it click to call event to make it easier. And then whenever that comes through, you just mark it as a conversion. So it's actually insanely quick once you understand how the parameters work, because at that point you can control everything, in my opinion. I think it's always a bit scary how much info they put into the parameters, because like anything that's JavaScript can be done in there, and we build websites out of JavaScript these days. It's pretty interesting little way of seeing things.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go on to Peter's question next. I think this is a great question. What happens when you double up? How do you consolidate badly recorded data? Great.
I don't know, Peter, because everything in my heart and soul says read the documentation and don't muck it up. So look, my imagination, I'll just again conjecture here, to be completely honest, what I assume is going to happen. You're going to get the event, and that event is going to come with the parameters, but it will have less parameters than, say, I would assume, sorry, making it sound very definite here, I would assume that event would still come in with substantially less parameters. And it would highly depend on when the events fire. For example, if I had 2 page view events with slightly different parameters, I think that would be recorded as 2 separate things, and in and of themselves would have separate parameters, which is fine. I just guess you just have lots of events for that page, which is kind of crappy. But the way you'd be able to distinguish them is through the parameters themselves. So I don't know is the answer, but judging by the way everything else works, that's the logical conclusion that I could come to. To fix it, you would just probably need there's a debug mode I mentioned in there. You click debug at the bottom, start the Chrome Analytics debugger tool, and then it'll record every event that's happening when you're on the website and not count towards your stats, which is super good. When it has that, you'll be able to see all the events that you occur, and it would just be a process of actually just physically clicking on the events that you have in question and checking the parameters that come up. It would definitely be something that I'd recommend doing if you had good experience in the space or multiple clients on a similar sort of event structure or flow. But that would be my approach. And then getting rid of it would be as simple as just finding the code and getting it. But as we all know, when something's recorded in GA, it is not, you can't really change it retrospectively outside of filtering it out through filters that don't exist in GA4. But filters in UA, you could have gotten around it. I think is the right way to put it.
That is very well answered.
Do you want to go for the last one?
I think there's two more. There's Paula's and then there's Peter's.
Right. So I'll go for Peter's as usual.
Awesome.
How
Well,
is the approach of? Sorry, you were saying something, Nick?
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask Paula's question, but no. Let's do Peter's question, and then we'll finish up on Paula's question.
Yep. So how has the approach of handling PI and CRM integration changed in GA4 versus UA?
I don't know that it really
Another
has.
easy one for you.
Yeah. like you're getting all the good stuff, mate, today. Thankfully, you've still got a couple left. No, so in my mind, it hasn't really changed. I think if anything, now this is something again. I want to caveat this part of it because I think again, there's a line between being creepy and a kind of being like marketing and being focused on this, right? And I think for some people, this is the line, right? First off, PII is absolutely inexcusable to have in your GA platform, regardless of version, regardless of system. However, it's absolutely acceptable to have, say, a session ID or a user ID that is persistent that you store in a CRM system instead. So completely independent from GA. In my opinion, to answer your question directly, Peter, the approach is not really different. You can still, obviously, by virtue of having so much access to these parameters, more easily add it in, I think is the right way to put it, which you shouldn't do. But because it's more easy to add in, I think that there's a greater clarity around being able to control what users are doing based on specific IDs and so on. Oftentimes, similarly to what we experience in Google Search Console, if there's not enough data over one thing and Google thinks you're going on to that little check about like really identifying that individual, the data simply won't show. So from that sense, it's not as always as clear when there's minimal data for when compared to UA, I should say. But GA4, I'd say just by virtue of having parameters that you can individually set, mate, you could get so much extra information from your user journey on GA4 and easily connect that to your CRM system, provided that you have the correct implementation in place and you are recording in some way the user ID, be that through a logged in area or through a form or something like that.
Fantastic. And we'll finish up with another good friend, Paula. Her question is, how would you set up a filter to show only, say, Australian traffic if you only sell to Australia?
Yeah, so this is one of the good things. I'm going to quickly confirm my words here before I go for it, but I'm 99% certain that there's a comparison. I mentioned comparisons, which is usually where we see segments in UA, but for GA4, it's just up there called comparisons. I believe it has a country. Yeah, it does. I've just confirmed it here. It has an inclusion for country. So you would probably just set that up as a comparison. I don't believe, and I'm just going to quickly test this. I don't believe you can turn off. Oh, you can. And then you would just set up your comparison and then turn off your all users to get that information. There wouldn't be a filter in the sense of like you would always get all of the data across every country that you're doing any work on, but you would still be able to segment the data or compare, as is the new methodology, a specific country's results only so long as you have had data from that country. So, if you've never got something from the UK, you will not be able to segment UK data because none of it exists for obvious reasons. It won't even be selectable from the dropdown. But yeah, through comparisons, and then if you're using like your analysis hub, you can by all means just use a simple segment from there. Again, on the same logic, just a user dimension, user country is equal to Australia, and you should be completely fine there. I don't think the pages is the best way to go about it. The page location thing isn't really quite popular anymore. I just use the country dimensions that get sent as part of the page view.
Awesome. Well, that was absolutely phenomenal. I think everyone who has listened to it today and will listen to it in the future will be able to get a lot of really excellent benefit out of that. I know I've learned so much. Like things, yeah, I'd just like to say thank you so much to, first and foremost, like the community that comes to SEO Meetup with us online here, asking these fantastic questions. As much as we love that, like being able to do this, like the questions really do enrich the experience. One for me, and I hope for you as well, Dan.
Oh, absolutely. I love I love it when people ask questions, because look, from a technical sense, we can go very deep, but also I think, and just like, I guess, the encouragement to people who are a bit afraid to ask questions, like there is no stupid question. We all started somewhere in our journey. And I think, and part of the reason we have this community is to kind of tear down that perception and just bring everybody together. And it's a rare thing, like I always joke, like the PPC guys, we don't have a community like this. We all protect our keywords. We all protect our optimization, but SEO in particular is just all about learning and pushing it for our clients and for our own sites to do better. And I think when it comes from that space, it's very open. So I love it. Simple questions are great. Complicated questions are great. Just communication is awesome in this community. So keep it up, guys. I love it.
Yeah, they stopped giving us keywords, so we had to do something about it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Thank you so much, everyone. Dan Wilds, absolute titan for all things analytics. If you want to be able to find Dan, Dan, do you mind actually resharing that little page that you had before so that people could be able to find it again? But if you want to find him, he's on LinkedIn, he's on Twitter at Dan Wild J. So if you've got any more questions about Google Analytics 4, please reach out to him and ask your questions. Saijo, it is always a pleasure to be hosting this with you.
Likewise, Nick.
Again, for anyone who's just might need a little mental reminder, TDLR marketing really is fantastic. It's one that I love to read. Please, pop the little subscribe there. Again, not sponsored, just a recommendation because it is truly awesome.
Even and the web interface is good, man. Like I use it a lot more for the web when I want to find news. Can't be bothered waiting for newsletters personally, but I love the website, man. It's just so easy to find info and keeps it fresh, dude. It's well done.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Like we had like that's how I was in development for quite a while. Like I used a couple of different freelancers, but at the end of the day, like when it was finally done, like I was quite happy with it. So
yeah, it's great, man. You've done incredibly. So good to see.
Yeah, and I also just remembered something else that came out in between the last SEO meetup and this SEO meetup, which was your website, whoisthebestseo.com.
Yeah.
Like make someone's day, go to who I'll literally just type it out, whoisthebestseo.com. Send it to your marketing geek mates, make them smile. That's a really fun website to also visit. All right, guys, as always, this is SEO Meetup Melbourne. Find us online. I will be putting things in the show notes. I will be putting Hamlet Batista's GoFundMe that Lily Ray set up, and as a community we can all band together and just really appreciate the community that we do have. Stay safe, and if you want to be able to support us, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell to be able to be notified every time we come out with videos. Otherwise, It's always the first Tuesday of every month, unless there's something critically wrong with me. So yeah.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
also the likes, hit the little likes, because my understanding, which is very limited for social media, is that it helps us with the YouTube algorithm. This is all free, all volunteered work. Stay safe. Much love.
Bye-bye.